What if the ground beneath your feet held secrets so profound they could rewrite history? Picture this. You're walking through the weathered ruins of an ancient amphitheater. The echoes of applause long faded, the stones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. But what if I told you that beneath those very stones lies something far more extraordinary? A hidden ritual site, untouched for ages, waiting to reveal an entire other history lost to time. This isn't just another archaeological discovery, it's a portal to a forgotten world, where the rituals of a mysterious civilization were performed in shadow, their stories buried under layers of earth and assumption. The moment archaeologists uncovered this site, everything changed. Imagine their awe as they brushed away the dust to find artifacts that defied explanation, objects steeped in symbolism, altars arranged in patterns that matched no known tradition, and inscriptions in a language no one could decipher. This wasn't just a place of performance, it was a sacred space, hidden deliberately beneath the clamor of public spectacle. Why would a civilization go to such lengths to conceal their most intimate rituals? What were they trying to protect? Or perhaps, what were they trying to hide? The answers lie in the details, in the subtle clues left behind like breadcrumbs leading us deeper into the mystery. This discovery isn't just about rewriting history books, it's about understanding the human impulse to preserve what matters most. Across cultures and centuries, people have built monuments to their beliefs, their fears, their hopes, but this site, it's different. It challenges everything we thought we knew about the people who came before us, forcing us to question the narratives we've accepted as truth. And that's why this journey matters, because history isn't just a collection of facts, it's a living, breathing story, and sometimes the most important chapters are the ones hidden in plain sight. So let's step into the shadows together and uncover what the past has been waiting to tell us. At first glance, the amphitheater seems like an open book, a grand stage for gladiators, poets, or politicians to command the crowd's attention. But look closer and the cracks in that story start to show. The architecture itself holds whispers of contradiction. Why would a structure designed for public gatherings have corridors that lead nowhere, or chambers too small for storage yet too ornate to ignore? And those carvings subtle, almost hidden, depicting symbols that don't match any known religious or cultural motifs of the era. It's as if the builders left deliberate clues, knowing someday someone would piece together the truth. The more archaeologists studied the site, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a place for applause and spectacle. The alignment of the tiers, the positioning of certain stones, they didn't follow the usual blueprints for entertainment venues. Instead, they mirrored sacred geometries found in distant temples, suggesting a dual purpose. Imagine the scene: above ground, crowds cheer under the open sky, oblivious to what unfolds beneath their feet. Below, in carefully hidden chambers, rituals unfolded, ceremonies so significant they had to be shielded from the public eye. But why? Was it to protect sacred knowledge, or was there something about these rites that even the empire's most loyal citizens weren't meant to witness? Then there's the matter of timing. The amphitheater was built during the empire's peak, a period of unmatched power and control. Yet, the hidden chambers show signs of use long after the empire's decline, as if the rituals outlived the civilization itself. Who carried them forward, and what did they believe they were preserving? The artifacts found here, unlike anything in museums, hint at a tradition that diverged sharply from mainstream history. A single clay tablet, etched with a language that predates the empire by centuries, suggests this site was chosen deliberately, layered with meaning long before the first stone of the amphitheater was laid. This isn't just a story of hidden rooms and forgotten rites. It's about the lengths people will go to safeguard their beliefs, even when the world above them changes beyond recognition. The amphitheater's grandeur was a mask, a distraction from the deeper truth buried below. And now, as we peel back those layers, we're left with a haunting question. How many other monuments standing in plain sight are keeping secrets just as profound? The discovery of that narrow passageway was like finding a key to a door no one knew existed. Workers clearing debris near the amphitheater stage suddenly noticed something strange, a slight depression in the stone, almost invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. When they pried it open, cold, damp air rushed out, carrying the scent of earth and time. The corridor beyond was so tight that only one person could pass through at a time, its walls pressing in like a secret too long kept. But what truly stopped archaeologists in their tracks were the symbols, hundreds of them, carved with painstaking precision into every surface. These weren't casual graffiti or construction marks. They were deliberate, almost urgent, as if the people who made them needed to leave a message that would outlast empires. Initial analysis revealed something even more startling. The symbols weren't from a single culture or time period. Some matched known religious iconography from the empire's height, while others were far older, echoing traditions thought to have vanished centuries before the amphitheater was built. A few were completely unknown, their meanings locked away with those who carved them. This wasn't just a passage, it was a tapestry of belief systems, woven together in shadow. The arrangement was intentional, too. Certain symbols repeated at intervals like mile markers on a spiritual journey, suggesting this corridor wasn't merely functional. It was transformative, designed to prepare those who walked it for what lay ahead. Then there's the floor. Unlike the smooth, worn stones of the amphitheater above, the passageway's ground was uneven, even treacherous in places. At first, researchers assumed it was due to age or poor construction, but laser scans revealed something extraordinary. The dips and ridges formed a pattern, one that aligned with celestial events. During the summer solstice, sunlight would pierce a small opening at the passage's entrance, casting a beam that illuminated specific symbols in sequence, like a cosmic clock. This wasn't just architecture, it was a ritual in stone, a way to mark time sacredly. Whoever designed this space didn't just want it hidden, they wanted it alive, interacting with the world above in ways the uninitiated would never notice. So who walked here? The answer might lie in the artifacts found scattered along the corridor, tiny clay lamps, their wicks charred from use, and fragments of thin metal discs etched with constellations. These weren't tools for performers or stagehands. They were instruments of ceremony, left behind by people who moved through this space with purpose. The lamps suggest processions, their flickering light guiding the way, while the discs hint at astrological rites, perhaps used to chart moments of spiritual significance. But the most haunting clue, footprints, preserved in patches of ancient mud, they show bare feet moving in both directions, some hurried, others slow and deliberate. These weren't crowds, they were individuals or small groups, coming and going in silence, carrying out acts we can only begin to imagine. The passageway doesn't just connect two places, it connects two worlds. Above, the roar of the crowd and the spectacle of power. Below, whispers in the dark and rituals meant for only a chosen few. And now, centuries later, we're the ones stepping into that darkness, following the same path as those who kept their secrets close. What they left behind isn't just a trail of symbols and artifacts. It's an invitation to listen, to hear the echoes of voices that history almost forgot. Deep beneath the amphitheater's crumbling steps, The Chamber of Echoes waits a space where sound bends to the will of ancient architects. Step inside, and the first thing you'll notice is the silence. Not the absence of noise, but a heavy, waiting quiet, as if the air itself is holding its breath. Then a whisper, your own voice, barely audible at first, travels the curved walls like a ripple on water, growing clearer with distance instead of fading. It's disorienting, almost magical, a trick of acoustics so precise it feels like defiance against the laws of nature. But this was no accident. Every angle, every surface was calculated, a testament to a knowledge of sound that rivals modern engineering. What kind of rituals demanded such perfection? Imagine a small group gathered in the chamber's center, their chants rising in harmony. In this space, a single voice could swell into a chorus, a hymn could become thunder, a prayer might echo as if the gods themselves were repeating it back. Some researchers believe the chamber was a bridge between worlds, a place where the living could commune with spirits or deities by distorting the very fabric of sound. Others point to the faint grooves worn into the floor, suggesting rhythmic movement, perhaps dances or processions timed to the reverberations. Then there are the markings, symbols etched at specific points where the acoustics shift, as if to guide the speaker or warn them. The most chilling detail, the echoes don't behave the way they should. Modern audio engineers have mapped the chamber, and certain frequencies linger far longer than physics can explain. A particular tone, a specific syllable, might hang in the air for minutes, looping like a broken record. Was this intentional? Could the builders have known how to trap sound, to preserve it like an insect in amber? It's as if the chamber wasn't just a tool, but a living entity, one that remembers. And then there's the question of who had access. The passage leading here is narrow, concealed, with no room for crowds. This wasn't a spectacle for the masses. It was a sanctuary for the few, priests, oracles, initiates sworn to secrecy. The amphitheater above thrived on noise, on the roar of approval or the gasp of shock. But below, the power lay in control, in the ability to bend sound to something sacred. What secrets were spoken here that needed to reverberate through time? What words were so potent they required a chamber that wouldn't let them die? The echoes won't tell us, not yet. But standing in that space, you can't shake the feeling that if you just listened closely enough, if you found the right combination of notes, the walls might finally reveal what they've been repeating for centuries. The altar stands silent, at the center of it all a slab of weathered stone that hums with quiet energy even now. Its surface tells stories in stains and grooves, dark patches where centuries of offerings soaked deep into the rock. When scientists tested those stains, the results were startling. Not just one substance, but layers upon layers of residue herbs with medicinal properties, oils pressed from sacred plants, even traces of animal blood. This wasn't a place for casual ritual. Every mark speaks of intention, of people bringing their most precious gifts to this spot, hoping to reach something beyond themselves. But the altar's true power lies in its precision. Carved into its base are shallow channels that catch the light at specific times of year. During the equinox, sunlight streams through a hidden shaft in the amphitheater above, striking the altar's edge and igniting a line of fire across its surface, a phenomenon so deliberate it couldn't possibly be accidental. Whoever built this understood the cosmos intimately, tying their ceremonies to the rhythm of the heavens. Were they marking time, or were they trying to harness it? Some researchers believe the altar functioned as a kind of spiritual battery, its alignment amplifying the potency of offerings during celestial events. Others point to the grooves radiating from its center, too precise for drainage, too deliberate for wear, suggesting liquids were poured in ritual patterns, perhaps mapping constellations or sacred symbols. Then there's the question of desperation versus devotion. The offerings vary wildly in nature. Some residues indicate rare, expensive substances, frankincense, myrrh, oils traded across continents. But others are startlingly humble: wildflowers, common grains, even traces of saliva. This wasn't just a stage for the elite. People from all walks of life came here, bringing what they could. The altar's stains are a ledger of human longing, records of harvests prayed for, illnesses feared, battles waged. One particularly haunting discovery: a child's handprint, faint but unmistakable, pressed into the stone near the altar's edge. Was it a blessing, a plea, or something darker? The most compelling clue might be what's missing. Unlike other ritual sites, there are no carvings of gods or spirits on the altar itself, no faces to direct prayers toward, just smooth, almost indifferent stone. This absence feels intentional, as if the power being invoked was too vast, too formless to be captured in an image. People weren't just leaving gifts for a deity. They were attempting communion with forces that defied description. And perhaps that's why this altar was hidden beneath layers of civilization, because some truths are too raw, too overwhelming, to be exposed to the light of day. The Wall of Whispers isn't just stone, it's a chorus of voices frozen in time. Run your fingers along its surface, and you'll feel the uneven texture of countless inscriptions, each groove a fingerprint of human emotion. Names overlap names, prayers intersect with curses, creating a labyrinth of desperation and hope. Some carvings are delicate, the work of careful hands, while others are jagged, as if etched in haste or anguish. This wasn't a wall meant for decoration. It was a confessional, a silent witness to the rawest moments of those who came here seeking answers. The sheer volume of markings tells its own story. Generations returned to this spot, adding their voices to the chorus. A mother's plea for a child's health might lie beneath a merchant's prayer for prosperity, which itself crosses paths with a soldier's oath of vengeance. The wall doesn't discriminate, it holds them all, a mosaic of human experience. But what's truly striking is the intimacy of these messages. Unlike public monuments or official records, these inscriptions weren't meant for the eyes of rulers or historians. They were whispers to the dark, secrets shared only with the stones. Then there's the language of the markings. While many are in the empire's common tongue, others use dialects or scripts so rare they've stumped linguists. A few appear to be in code, their meaning known only to the hands that carved them. This diversity hints at something extraordinary. The site's reputation must have spread far beyond the empire's borders, drawing pilgrims from distant lands. Imagine the journey some undertook, traveling weeks or months, risking everything just to stand before this wall and etch their truth into its surface. But the most haunting question isn't who came, it's why they believed this place held power. Unlike temples or shrines, there are no statues of gods here, no altars drenched in offerings. Just a wall, cold and unyielding, yet something about it compelled people to carve their deepest fears into its face. Perhaps it was the chamber's acoustics, amplifying their whispers into something that felt supernatural. Or maybe it was the weight of history, the knowledge that thousands before them had stood in the same spot, leaving their mark like a chain of souls stretching back through time. One inscription stands out, a single word repeated hundreds of times in different hands across centuries. Remember, not a plea, not a prayer, but a command or perhaps a promise. Who were they asking to remember? Themselves, their suffering, or something far older, something this site was built to guard? The wall won't say, but its silence speaks volumes. Every scratch, every groove is a reminder that history isn't just about kings and conquests. It's about the quiet moments when ordinary people stood in the dark and whispered their truths to the stones, hoping against all odds that someone, someday, would listen. Tucked away in the deepest recess of the chamber, shielded from time by layers of dust and silence, lies the site's most tantalizing mystery, a hidden library. Not shelves of parchment or bound books as we know them, but rows of delicate clay tablets and tightly rolled scrolls, their edges brittle yet perfectly preserved by the chamber's dry, sealed air. The moment archaeologists brushed away the sediment, they uncovered not just artifacts but voices, hundreds of them, waiting centuries to speak. The texts are a puzzle within a puzzle. Written in a script only partially deciphered, they weave together rituals, celestial charts, and cryptic warnings with an urgency that leaps across the ages. One passage, etched into a tablet no larger than a hand, describes a veil between worlds, a barrier so thin it could be pierced with the right words, the right offerings. Was this a metaphor, or did the people who hid these texts truly believe in realms beyond our own? The language itself offers clues, verbs carved with deliberate force, adjectives that seem to tremble with reverence or fear. This wasn't just record-keeping, it was a guidebook for navigating the unseen. Then there are the celestial observations, detailed records of star alignments, planetary movements, even comets that streaked across the sky, all meticulously noted alongside dates that correspond to no known calendar. Some tablets appear to be instructions, outlining rituals tied to specific cosmic events. One describes a ceremony to be performed when the red star drowns in the moon's shadow, a phrase that matches astronomical records of a lunar eclipse visible in the region over 2,000 years ago. The precision is staggering. Whoever wrote these texts didn't just watch the heavens, they listened to them as if the stars were whispering secrets. But the most chilling discoveries are the warnings. Fragments speak of doors that must not be opened, voices that answer in the dark, and a price paid in blood and breath. One scroll, unrolled with painstaking care, bears a single sentence repeated down its entire length: "To know is to awaken." Whether this was a mantra, a threat, or a plea remains unclear. What is certain is that these weren't idle superstitions. The warnings are too specific, too visceral. They read like the aftermath of something witnessed or unleashed. The untranslated fragments may hold the key. Linguists have identified at least 3 distinct writing styles within the library, suggesting multiple authors across generations. Some tablets are neat and orderly, the work of scholars. Others are rushed, chaotic, as if written in a frenzy. A few show signs of being deliberately damaged, scratched out or shattered, then carefully buried. What truth was so dangerous it needed to be destroyed, yet preserved? This library wasn't meant for the outside world. Its texts weren't displayed in temples or taught to the masses. They were hidden, protected, as if the knowledge they held was both sacred and volatile. And now, as we painstakingly piece together their meanings, we're left to wonder, were these warnings meant for their time or for ours? The answer may lie in the next fragment decoded, the next symbol illuminated, a message across millennia, waiting for the right moment to be heard. The masks emerge from the shadows like fragments of a forgotten dream, some serene with the calm of deities, others twisted into expressions so unsettling they seem to pulse with a life of their own. Carved from materials ranging from polished oak to delicate bronze, each one bears the marks of a craftsman who understood power lies not just in the wearer, but in the transformation itself. These weren't mere disguises. Press one against your face, and you didn't just look different, you became something else, a conduit, a vessel, perhaps even a sacrifice. The artistry is staggering. Delicate gold leaf traces the contours of a goddess's smile, while another mask's hollow eyes are ringed with lapis lazuli, the blue so vivid it seems to glow in dim light. But it's the grotesque ones that linger in memory, faces elongated into animalistic snouts, mouths stretched too wide as if frozen mid-scream. Were these meant to frighten, to protect, or to embody forces too chaotic to name? The masks share one haunting commonality. None have holes for the wearer's eyes. To don one was to surrender sight, to step blindly into a role dictated by something beyond human understanding. Ritual marks on the inner surfaces tell a darker story. Scratches cluster near the cheekbones and forehead, not from wear, but from something clawing at the mask from inside. Traces of plant residues suggest hallucinogenic compounds were applied where the skin would touch, meaning wearers didn't just perform roles, they were chemically induced to become them. Imagine the scene, a procession of masked figures moving through torchlight, their breaths ragged behind carved lips, their minds unmoored by sacred brews. Were these priests channeling gods, or were they unwilling participants in something far older? The distribution of the masks deepens the mystery. They weren't scattered randomly but arranged in clusters, 3 serene masks facing one grotesque, or a circle of animal visages surrounding a single humanoid figure. This wasn't random theatrics, it was a carefully choreographed hierarchy, a visual language where placement conveyed meaning. One particularly chilling discovery, a child-sized mask, its edges worn smooth, found near the altar. Was this innocence deliberately corrupted, or a lineage of ritual passed down through generations? Most compelling of all are the masks that show signs of deliberate destruction. Some are split down the middle as if cleaved by a blade, others bear scorch marks, their surfaces blackened by fire, yet they were preserved, hidden away instead of discarded. This suggests a paradox: objects too dangerous to use but too sacred to destroy. Whatever transpired in these chambers, the masks weren't just part of the ceremony. They were witnesses, and in their silent, staring faces, we catch glimpses of a truth we're only beginning to unravel. The moment sunlight pierces the chamber's narrow entrance on the summer solstice, the entire space transforms. A golden blade of light cuts through the darkness, striking a series of carved markers along the far wall with mathematical precision. But this isn't just a pretty trick of light, it's a meticulously engineered calendar, a celestial clock built into stone. Each marker corresponds to a different astronomical event: equinoxes, planetary conjunctions, even the rare moments when certain stars grazed the horizon. The builders didn't just observe the heavens, they wove them into the very fabric of their rituals, turning the chamber into a bridge between earth and sky. Consider the implications. To achieve this level of accuracy, the architects needed an intimate knowledge of celestial cycles that would have required generations of observation. Some alignments are so precise they only occur once every few decades, like the beam that illuminates a hidden constellation diagram during a specific lunar eclipse. This wasn't guesswork, it was sacred science passed down through initiates who understood that timing wasn't just practical, it was mystical. When the stars aligned, so did the veil between worlds. But why go to such lengths? One theory suggests these alignments amplified spiritual energy, like a lens focusing sunlight into fire. A ceremony performed under the correct celestial conditions might have been believed to carry more weight, its prayers or offerings magnified by cosmic forces. The artifacts support this. Offerings found near alignment markers are richer, more elaborate, as if reserved for these potent moments. Another, more unsettling possibility: the alignments weren't just for worship but for communication. Certain markings resemble star maps, but with additions, lines connecting constellations in ways that don't mirror the night sky, but perhaps something beyond it. The most compelling evidence lies in the chamber's acoustics. During solstice events, the angle of sunlight interacts with the walls in a way that creates eerie harmonic resonances. Chant a particular note, and the room answers with a chorus of echoes that weren't there moments before. It's as if the architecture was designed to harmonize with celestial events, turning the chamber into an instrument played by the cosmos itself. Then there's the question of who benefited from this knowledge. The alignments aren't visible from the amphitheater above. Only those who knew the secrets of the chamber could harness them. This suggests a hidden lineage of astronomers, priests, guardians of celestial wisdom that could predict eclipses or planetary movements long before they occurred. In an era where such knowledge equated to divine power, controlling the skies meant controlling the narrative. Yet the most haunting thought isn't about how they used these alignments, but why they felt the need to hide them. Other cultures built towering observatories to celebrate their connection to the stars, but here the cosmos was revered in secret, its rhythms encoded in shadow. Perhaps some truths were too potent for daylight, or perhaps, as the warnings in the library suggest, they knew something about the stars that made them fear the sky as much as they revered it. The inscriptions etched into the chamber walls aren't just words, they're a labyrinth of meaning, a language that defies every known dialect of its time. At first glance, some symbols resemble familiar alphabets, but the closer linguists look, the more they unravel. Certain characters mirror ancient Phoenician script, while others echo Hittite cuneiform, yet they're arranged in ways that make no grammatical sense. It's as if the creators took fragments of known languages and twisted them into something entirely new, a code meant to be understood only by the initiated. What's striking isn't just the language's uniqueness, it's the consistency. Across centuries of use, the symbols remain unchanged, as if frozen in time. This wasn't a living, evolving tongue. It was a sacred cipher deliberately preserved to guard its secrets. Some researchers believe it was a ritual language used exclusively for ceremonies to create a barrier between the sacred and the profane. Imagine a priest chanting words so potent they couldn't risk being spoken outside these walls, lest their power be diluted or misused. The few fragments that have been tentatively translated only deepen the mystery. One recurring phrase found near the altar translates roughly to "the veil trembles." Another, carved into the base of a shattered mask, reads "silence speaks." These aren't descriptions or prayers, they're incantations, phrases designed to do something, not just say it. The language's structure supports this. Verbs dominate, often positioned at the start of inscriptions as if commands to unseen forces. This wasn't a tongue for conversation. It was a tool, a means of shaping reality. Then there's the eerie repetition of certain symbols. One in particular, a spiral crossed with a vertical line, appears at every threshold, every entrance, like a warning or a ward. In one chamber, it's etched above a niche containing charred bones, suggesting it might have denoted danger or transformation. Elsewhere, the same symbol is carved into the floor where light strikes during solstices, implying a dual meaning. Context shifts its significance, just as the word fire can mean warmth or destruction depending on where it's spoken. The greatest challenge lies in the gaps. Large sections of text remain untranslated, their meanings locked away. Some inscriptions are deliberately damaged, their surfaces scratched or burned, as if someone tried to erase them from history. Others are hidden in plain sight, tiny markings along the edges of tablets, nearly invisible unless illuminated at the right angle. These weren't casual additions. They were layers of secrecy, ensuring that even if someone deciphered the surface language, deeper truths would remain concealed. But the most tantalizing clue isn't in the words themselves, it's in how they're arranged. Certain passages curve in spirals or zigzags, mirroring celestial patterns or the layout of the chambers. One scroll, when unfurled, reveals text that coils like a serpent, its head and tail meeting to form an unbroken loop. This wasn't just writing, it was ritual art where the form held as much power as the content. To read it aloud would be to trace a path, to walk a symbolic journey with every syllable. The question lingers, why go to such lengths to hide meaning? Other ancient cultures carved their histories into stone for all to see. But here, knowledge was compartmentalized, accessible only to those who knew how to look. Perhaps the language wasn't just a means of communication, but a filter, a way to ensure that only the worthy, only the prepared could grasp what lay beneath. And now, as we painstakingly piece together these fragments, we're left to wonder, were these words meant to be decoded at all, or were they always intended to be a mystery, a final barrier guarding truths too potent for the modern world? The bone pit isn't just a grave for animals, it's a ledger of desperation and devotion, written in fragments of ribs, skulls, and vertebrae. Step into the side chamber, and the air still carries the iron tang of centuries-old sacrifice. The bones aren't scattered haphazardly. They're arranged in concentric circles, spirals, even what appears to be constellations mirrored from the night sky. Forensic anthropologists traced cut marks on the bones with surgical precision, each incision made at the same angle, the same depth, signs of hands trained in ritual, not butchery. These weren't random slaughters, they were ceremonies repeated with meticulous consistency over generations. The species tell their own story. Goats and sheep dominate, their bones bearing the wear of domestication, but scattered among them are rarer finds, a stag's antlers, a boar's tusks, even the delicate bones of birds of prey. These weren't just livestock, they were chosen, each creature selected for symbolic meaning we can only guess at. The presence of predators alongside prey suggests a balance, a recognition of nature's duality. But the most telling detail, the absence of waste. Every fragment was used. Skulls were polished smooth, likely as vessels. Long bones were hollowed into flutes or whistles. Nothing was discarded, an unspoken rule that even in sacrifice, nothing was taken without purpose. Then there's the burning, layers of ash alternate with bone, evidence of fires lit again and again in the same spot. Chemical analysis revealed residues far stranger than wood smoke, herbs like juniper and sage, resins that would have sent plumes of fragrant smoke curling toward the chamber's ceiling. Imagine the scene, flames flickering against the walls, shadows dancing as priests or shamans read meaning in the way bones cracked under heat, the way smoke twisted into shapes. This wasn't just offering, it was conversation, an attempt to decipher messages from something beyond. The pit's location deepens the mystery. It sits adjacent to the altar but hidden behind a thin partition, as if the act of divination was too intimate, too volatile to perform in the open. Those who sought answers here didn't want spectators. They needed silence, focus, the kind of quiet where a whisper might carry the voice of a god, and the sheer volume of bones suggests this wasn't occasional. It was habitual, a relentless pursuit of guidance across decades, perhaps centuries. What crisis or obsession drove them back to this pit, season after season, generation after generation? One clue lingers in the soil. Mixed with the ash are tiny metal fragments, slivers of bronze too small to be tools, too uniform to be accidental. Under magnification, they resolve into shapes, crescent moons, stylized eyes, arrows. Tokens perhaps cast into the pit alongside the bones as physical prayers. The most haunting find, a child's finger bone nestled among the animal remains. A mistake or something far more deliberate, the pit won't say, but its silence speaks of a people who believed the boundary between life and death, between the earthly and the divine, was as thin as a knife's edge and just as sharp. The door stands as a silent sentinel at the chamber's edge, its surface fused shut with streaks of molten bronze, a brutal and deliberate act of closure. Unlike the other passages which were merely concealed, this barrier was meant to last. The metal wasn't just poured, it was seared into every crack and crevice, as if those who sealed it feared even a whisper of air might escape. Modern scans tell us what lies beyond, a hollow space undisturbed, its contents frozen in time. But the real question isn't what's inside, it's why the architects of this place went to such extremes to keep it hidden. The method itself is telling. Molten metal requires immense heat, technology, and intent. This wasn't a hasty barricade thrown up in panic. It was a ritual in its own right, a ceremonial act of severing. The bronze wasn't just a lock, it was a warning, a visible declaration that whatever lay beyond wasn't meant for mortal eyes. Across cultures, metal seals often marked tombs of the revered or the reviled, places where spirits or curses were thought to linger. But here, there's no grand epitaph, no curses etched into the door, just silence and the unsettling implication that some truths are too dangerous to name aloud. Then there's the timing. The seal dates to the site's final days, when the amphitheater above had already fallen into disuse. Whoever closed this door did so as the world outside changed irreversibly, as empires crumbled and religions shifted. Was this an act of preservation, a last-ditch effort to safeguard sacred knowledge from a coming darkness? Or was it containment, a way to bury something that could no longer be controlled? The lack of any markings suggests the latter. Things meant to be remembered are carved in stone. Things meant to be forgotten are sealed without a trace. Speculation about the chamber's contents ranges from the scholarly to the spine-chilling. Some researchers point to the site's recurring themes of celestial worship, suggesting the room might house artifacts tied to a lost astronomical tradition, perhaps even a mechanism for predicting eclipses or comets, knowledge potent enough to unsettle new rulers. Others whisper of relics too sacred to expose, objects believed to hold literal divine power. But the most haunting theory comes from the site's own library, the fragmented texts that speak of doors that must not be opened and voices in the dark. Were these metaphors, or were they instructions left behind by those who knew what waited on the other side? Technology offers tantalizing glimpses. Ground-penetrating radar reveals the chamber's dimensions, a perfect square, its walls unadorned, its center occupied by a single, solitary object too dense to identify. No bones, no artifacts scattered in disarray, just one thing placed with deliberate care, as if it were the heart of the entire complex. The scans can't tell us if it's a chest, a statue, or something far stranger. But they do reveal one chilling detail. The floor around it is scarred with grooves radiating outward like cracks in ice. Whatever rests there, it wasn't just stored. It was anchored. The door's seal remains unbroken, its secrets intact, and perhaps that's how it should stay. Every civilization has its thresholds, its lines not meant to be crossed. Behind that door isn't just an artifact or a relic, it's a choice. Some mysteries endure not because we can't solve them, but because we dare not try. The murals emerge from the walls like fragments of a fever dream, faded pigments clinging stubbornly to stone, depicting scenes that defy logic and time. At first glance, the figures seem human, their limbs elongated in motion, but look longer, and the shadows behind them twist unnaturally, curling around their bodies like living smoke. This isn't mere artistic flourish. Every brushstroke suggests intention, a visual language meant to convey something beyond the visible. The style itself is the first clue, fluid where the empire's art was rigid, organic where their carvings were precise. These weren't painted by the hands that built the amphitheater. They were left by someone or something older. The ceremonies depicted are unlike any recorded in mainstream histories. In one panel, robed figures raise blades not to sacrifice animals, but to cut the very air, their shadows stretching impossibly long across the wall. Another shows initiates kneeling as their silhouettes detach, rising like vapor to join a swirling mass above. The most unsettling mural lies in the chamber's deepest corner, a procession of figures mid-stride, their faces turned upward in ecstasy or terror, while their shadows walk deliberately in the opposite direction. Were these metaphors, or did the artists truly believe such transformations were possible? Color tells its own story. While most ancient pigments fade to monotone, traces remain: deep blues ground from lapis lazuli, vibrant reds from cinnabar. These weren't cheap materials, they were imported at great cost, reserved for sacred spaces. Yet the murals hide in near darkness, their brilliance wasted on a chamber few would ever see. This paradox hints at their purpose: not decoration but documentation. The artists weren't creating art for admiration. They were preserving acts too dangerous to perform in daylight. Then there's the question of chronology. The paint lies beneath layers of soot and calcification, suggesting the murals predate even the earliest amphitheater repairs. But the true shock came when restorers analyzed the binder, a plant-based adhesive common in a region hundreds of miles away, used centuries before the empire's rise. This wasn't just outside influence, it was a time capsule, proof that the site's sacred significance stretched back far longer than anyone guessed. The murals weren't added to the chamber. They were inherited by it, like a story passed between cultures until its origins blurred. The most compelling detail hides in plain sight: fingerprints. Pressed into the edges of certain figures, they're smaller than adult hands, some with the delicate walls of children. Were these apprentices learning sacred art, or participants in the very rituals depicted? One set of prints appears repeatedly near the transformation scenes, always in red, as if the artist or subject left their mark in something thicker than paint. These walls don't just show ceremonies, they show obsession. The same motifs repeat across generations: shadows elongating, figures merging, boundaries dissolving. Whoever painted these scenes didn't just believe in transformation. They chased it again and again, leaving their testimony where only the initiated would understand. And now, as we trace the contours of their fading visions, we're left to wonder, were these murals warnings, instructions, or invitations? The paint may crack, but the shadows they captured remain unsettlingly alive. The resonant stones lie scattered like forgotten notes of a song only the walls remember. Touch one, and it thrums beneath your fingers, not with the dead weight of rock, but with a latent energy waiting to be awakened. Strike it gently, and the sound isn't just heard, it's felt, vibrating up through the bones of the chamber itself. These aren't accidental formations or decorative pieces. Each one was chosen, shaped, and placed with a precision that borders on devotion, tuned to frequencies that align with the natural acoustics of the space. Scientists mapping the stones made an eerie discovery. Their placements form a geometric grid, each point calculated to amplify specific harmonics when activated in sequence. Hit one stone and its tone lingers, strike another across the chamber, and the two notes intertwine, creating a third, unfamiliar resonance that seems to hover in the air like a phantom chord. This wasn't just music, it was alchemy, a way to transform sound into something tactile, almost alive. The effect is subtle at first, but in the hushed darkness of the chamber, the vibrations build, crawling up your spine like a whisper you can't quite decipher. Then there's the material. The stones aren't local. Petrographic analysis reveals they were quarried from a site over 200 miles away, a volcanic region where the basalt contains rare mineral deposits. When struck, these stones don't just ring, they hum, producing overtones that clash and merge in ways ordinary rock never could. The effort to transport them speaks volumes. This wasn't convenience, it was necessity. Whoever sought these stones knew their properties couldn't be replicated. They weren't building an instrument. They were summoning a voice, but what song demanded such sacrifice? Fragments of clay tablets found near the stones hint at an answer, notations unlike any musical scale we recognize. Symbols curve like staves, but the intervals between them defy conventional logic, suggesting tones that exist in the cracks between notes we know. Ethnographic parallels offer clues. Indigenous traditions from distant cultures use similar gap tones in rituals, frequencies believed to open doors to altered states. Were the stones meant to dissolve the boundary between worlds, to let the living hear what the dead might say? The most haunting experiment came when researchers recreated the chamber's acoustics digitally. Played in sequence, the stone's frequencies didn't just harmonize, they interfered, creating pulses that match the brainwave patterns of deep meditation or trance. At certain rhythms, the sound becomes almost tactile, a pressure against the skin. It's no wonder the site's murals show figures with hands raised, mouths open in silent song. They weren't just singing, they were riding the resonance, letting it carry them somewhere beyond the limits of ordinary perception. Yet the stones guard one final secret. Some bear faint wear patterns, not from being struck, but from grasping as if someone held onto them tightly while the room throbbed with sound. Were they anchors, keeping participants grounded as the vibrations shook the chamber? Or were they conduits meant to channel something back into the body? The stones won't say, but their song lingers, a ghostly echo of the moment when music wasn't just art, but a key to the unseen. The guardian statues loom in the passageways like silent sentinels frozen mid-snarl, their forms a deliberate defiance of nature. Half human, half beast, they twist the familiar into something unsettling, their bodies caught between states as if the stone itself refused to commit to one reality. Their craftsmanship is too refined to be mere decoration. Every muscle, every claw is rendered with anatomical precision, suggesting the artists didn't just imagine these creatures, they knew them. Their poses tell a story of vigilance. One statue crouches low, its elongated fingers splayed against the ground as if listening for footsteps. Another arches backward, its gaping mouth turned toward the ceiling in a soundless roar. These aren't passive ornaments, they're active participants in the space, their frozen movements charged with intention. The way they flank doorways and narrow corridors makes their purpose clear. This wasn't just art. It was a boundary, a line drawn in stone between the sacred and the profane. But what warranted such protection? The statue's hybrid forms offer clues. In cultures worldwide, creatures that blur the line between human and animal often serve as mediators, beings capable of traversing realms the purely human cannot. Were these guardians meant to repel physical intruders or something more elusive? The library's fragmented warnings about veils and voices take on new weight when viewed through the statue's hollow eyes. Perhaps they weren't just keeping people out, perhaps they were keeping something in. The materials deepen the mystery. While most of the site's carvings use local limestone, the guardians are hewn from darker, denser rock, a volcanic basalt streaked with red mineral deposits. Under ultraviolet light, those streaks glow faintly, tracing jagged patterns across the statue's bodies like old wounds. This wasn't an aesthetic choice. The stone was selected for its properties, its origins tied to regions mythologically associated with thresholds and transformation. Most haunting are the wear patterns. The statue's outstretched hands are polished smooth, their surfaces gleaming from centuries of touch. Not casual contact, but repeated, ritualistic gestures oil from skin, the press of palms in devotion or desperation. These guardians weren't feared, they were appeased. Offerings found at their bases tiny bronze bells, bundles of desiccated herbs, hint at ceremonies to keep them vigilant, to ensure their watchfulness never wavered. Yet one statue stands apart. Deep in the chamber's furthest recess, a single guardian lies toppled, its face deliberately shattered. The damage isn't random. The blows are concentrated around the eyes and mouth, as if someone sought to blind and silence it. Was this an act of defiance or a last, frantic attempt to break whatever protection these sentinels provided? The answer might lie in the statue's unique feature. Between its claws, it clutches a small, spherical object, a stone once painted to resemble an eye. The guardians don't just defend the space, they redefine it. Their presence transforms the chambers from mere rooms into a battleground of beliefs, a place where the physical and spiritual worlds were understood to collide. And now, as we trace the contours of their weathered forms, we're left to wonder, in all those centuries of watchfulness, did any of them ever blink? Among the chamber's most deliberate mysteries lies a cluster of artifacts so carefully arranged, they seem to defy time itself, a collection of tools, jewelry, and inscribed fragments, buried together like gifts left for strangers centuries later. These weren't lost or discarded items. Each object was placed with ritual precision, nestled in a small alcove lined with woven reeds and sealed with clay stamped with a single, recurring symbol, an open hand. The message is unmistakable. This was a time capsule, a bridge thrown across the ages by hands that knew their world was fading. The contents tell a story of urgency. A bronze mirror, its surface polished to a sheen that still catches light after millennia, lies beside a set of surgical blades so sharp they could slice parchment even now. These weren't everyday tools, they were instruments of precision, objects meant to see and shape the unseen. Then there's the jewelry, not the gaudy adornments of the elite, but simple pendants carved from bone, each etched with constellations that don't match any known sky map. One depicts a cluster of stars labeled with a single word, tentatively translated as return. Were these guides for a journey, or markers of a celestial event someone hoped would recur? But the true heart of the capsule lies in the written fragments. Unlike the library's formal tablets, these are scraps scratched onto thin sheets of lead, folded and refolded until they resemble tiny, metallic origami. Some are prayers, pleas to unnamed forces for protection or remembrance. Others are lists, ingredients for remedies, dates of celestial events, even names. Not kings or conquerors, but ordinary names, the kind whispered in homes and markets. One fragment, smoothed by frantic fingers, bears a single sentence: "Tell them we knew the price." The arrangement of these objects speaks volumes. The mirror reflects the jewelry, the blades point toward the texts, every angle calculated. This wasn't haphazard burial. It was a composition, a visual language meant to be read as much as the words themselves. The open hand symbol stamped on the ceiling clay adds another layer, a near-universal gesture of trust, of offering. Whoever assembled this wanted it found, not just by anyone but by those who would understand. Yet the most haunting question isn't what they left behind, it's why they thought the future would need it. Time capsules are acts of hope, but these feel different. The absence of gold or treasure suggests practicality, as if the creators prioritized knowledge over wealth. The surgical tools hint at healing, the star charts at navigation, the texts at survival. Was this a legacy meant to guide, or a warning etched in bronze and bone? The answer might lie in one final detail: the alcove's position. It sits directly beneath a shaft that, during the winter solstice, floods the space with light for exactly 7 minutes. Not long enough to read everything, just enough to know something waits in the dark. Perhaps that was the point, not to give answers, but to prove that the questions mattered. To say, across the centuries, we were here, we saw, we remembered. And now, as we hold these fragments of their world, we're left to wonder, were they speaking to us or to someone else entirely? The artifacts won't say, but their silence feels less like absence and more like a held breath. The blood channel carves a dark path through the stone, a slender groove so precisely cut, its edges still gleam under torchlight after centuries of disuse. Follow its path with your fingers and you'll feel the subtle slope, engineered to pull liquids downward with relentless gravity. This wasn't drainage. It was delivery, a sacred highway for the most potent substance known to ancient cultures, blood. The channel's design reveals chilling intentionality. At the altar's base, the groove begins shallow, almost tentative, as if to collect offerings with reverence. But halfway to its destination, the walls steepen sharply, funneling the flow into a swift, unbroken current, a physical manifestation of urgency. Whatever passed through this channel wasn't merely discarded, it was sent with purpose. Archaeologists traced its path to a circular drain, not connected to any known sewer system, but plunging straight down into unbroken earth. This was a direct line to the underworld, or perhaps to the gods themselves. Ritual bloodletting appears across civilizations, but rarely with this level of precision. Most cultures used bowls or pits to contain sacrifices. Here, the blood wasn't contained, it was directed, guided like a messenger carrying prayers into the soil. Soil analysis confirms the drain's base is saturated with iron and organic compounds, a ghostly residue of countless ceremonies, yet the most telling detail lies in what's missing. No animal bones cluster at the drain's mouth, no ash or char marks suggest burning. This wasn't about destruction, it was about transmission. The channel's curvature holds another secret. During excavations, researchers noticed peculiar wear patterns, not from liquid erosion but from repeated scraping, as if tools were dragged along its length. Then came the discovery: tiny bronze blades, their edges honed to surgical sharpness, found stacked near the altar. Their size matches the channel's width perfectly. These weren't butcher's tools, they were instruments of controlled sacrifice, designed to open veins with minimal suffering, ensuring the blood ran clean and pure. But why go to such lengths? Comparative mythology offers clues. In some ancient traditions, blood wasn't just an offering, it was a covenant, a binding agreement between mortals and the divine. The channel's path mirrors descriptions of veins of the earth, found in esoteric texts where blood flowed into the world's roots to renew its vitality. Perhaps this ritual was less about appeasement and more about reciprocity, a belief that the land needed nourishment only life's essence could provide. The final revelation came from an unexpected source: pollen. Sediment trapped in the channel contained traces of flowering plants, species known for their medicinal or hallucinogenic properties. Mixed with blood, they'd form a potent concoction, one that might alter perception or deepen trance states. This wasn't just sacrifice, it was alchemy. A transformation of substance into sacrament, with the channel as its sacred crucible. Standing over that narrow groove today, it's impossible to ignore the weight of what passed through it. Every drop carried prayers, promises, perhaps even prophecies, all swallowed by the earth without a trace. The channel's silence is its loudest testimony. Some conversations weren't meant for human ears. Scattered fragments of parchment and crumbling inscriptions whisper of a group so secretive, even their name has been lost to time. Historians refer to them simply as the Veiled Ones, a sect that emerged in the region's darkest era, practicing rites that defied both imperial decrees and mainstream religious doctrines. Their existence surfaces in oblique references, a merchant's diary warning travelers to avoid certain moonlit processions, a soldier's report describing robed figures moving, as if their feet never touched the ground, a playwright's satire mocking those who spoke to walls and expected answers. These fragments form a mosaic of a people who lived in the margins, their beliefs too radical or too dangerous to be recorded plainly. The timing of their disappearance sends chills down the spine. Official records note the amphitheater's abandonment coincided with a wave of purges targeting unorthodox influences under Emperor Marcus IV. But here's the twist: excavation layers reveal no signs of violent overthrow, no shattered doors, no mass graves. Instead, the site shows evidence of meticulous closure. Artifacts were arranged deliberately, passageways sealed with care, altars scrubbed clean of residue. This wasn't a flight, it was a vanishing act. What rituals warranted such secrecy? The sect's rumored practices offer clues. Scroll fragments describe ceremonies held when the moon swallowed the sun, a clear reference to eclipses, and rites involving mirrors that showed the unseeable. These weren't mere superstitions. The chamber's resonant stones and light alignments suggest the Veiled Ones wielded natural phenomena as spiritual tools, harnessing celestial events to transcend ordinary perception. Their most infamous rite, mentioned in a bishop's condemnatory letter, involved dancing with one's shadow until it walked alone. Could this explain the murals of detached silhouettes? The sect's legacy might hide in plain sight. Modern scholars note striking parallels between their esoteric symbols and motifs found in distant cultures. The spiral cross insignia matches carvings in underground Anatolian shrines, while their veil metaphor echoes Himalayan spiritual texts. This wasn't isolation. It was a web of hidden knowledge stretching across continents through channels we're only beginning to trace. Perhaps the most haunting possibility isn't that the sect disappeared, but that they transformed. Linguistic analysis reveals their symbols evolved subtly over time, merging with mainstream iconography like a whisper dissolving into song. Their greatest ritual might have been camouflage, folding their beliefs into acceptable forms, ensuring survival through assimilation. The amphitheater's final layer holds the proof: a Christian cross carved delicately over an older symbol, not erasing it, but cradling it like a secret too precious to discard. Their sanctuary wasn't lost, it was waiting, and now, as we brush the dust from these stones, we're left to wonder, did the Veiled Ones truly vanish, or did they simply step behind a curtain we've yet to lift? The warnings etched into the chamber walls don't just ask for respect, they demand it. Unlike the reverent prayers or celestial notations found elsewhere, these inscriptions snarl with a visceral urgency, their jagged letters clawing into the stone like talons. Turn back, one reads, its edges stained with something darker than age. The sleepers must not wake. Another, carved deep into the threshold of the inner chamber, bears a simpler threat: enter here and carry your death with you. These aren't idle threats or theatrical flourishes. The words are spaced unevenly, as if carved in haste or trembling hands, their message clear: some doors were never meant to be opened. What's chilling isn't just the content, it's the consistency. Across centuries, cultures, and even languages, the warnings echo the same dread. A fragment of pottery near the altar bears a faded curse in a dialect predating the amphitheater by generations, while a later bronze plaque repeats nearly identical phrasing. This wasn't casual superstition. It was a tradition of terror passed down through generations like a whispered secret. Even more unsettling, the curses aren't generic. They're specific. May your breath turn to ash. One inscription hisses while another promises, your name will be eaten by the dark. These aren't the vague threats of a protective charm. They read like first-hand accounts, as if the carvers knew exactly what awaited those who ignored them. The question lingers, were these curses effective? The site's pristine preservation suggests they might have been. While other ruins show signs of looting or vandalism, this chamber's artifacts remain untouched, its seals intact. Even the air feels different, stale, yes, but charged with something heavier, as if the walls themselves remember the weight of those warnings. Local folklore offers a clue. Villages miles away still tell stories of the hollow place, a taboo so ingrained that for centuries, shepherds wouldn't graze flocks near the amphitheater's shadow. Was this fear born of ancient curses or something far older, something the curses were trying to contain? Then there's the physical evidence. Near the library's entrance, researchers found a skeletal hand, its fingers fused around a rusted dagger. The bones showed no signs of violence, no fractures, no cuts, yet the posture was unmistakable, a grip of panic frozen in time. Was this a trespasser who ignored the warnings, or a guardian who took them too seriously? The dagger's blade bears an inscription too worn to read fully, but two letters remain clear, N and O, a plea, a name, or the last syllable of a word we'd rather not decipher. Perhaps the most telling detail lies in what's missing. Despite the abundance of curses, not a single inscription offers absolution or a way to lift the consequences. There's no ritual to undo the harm, no offering to appease whatever waits in the dark. The warnings are absolute, final, as if the writers knew some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed again. And now, as we trace the grooves of those ancient words, we're left to wonder, were the curses meant to protect the living from the dead, or the dead from whatever the living might unleash? The mirror pool glimmers like a liquid eye set into the chamber floor, a perfect circle of black water so still, it's impossible to tell where the stone ends and the reflection begins. Unlike the ritual blood channel or the echoing alcoves, this space feels suspended outside time, its surface unbroken by even a ripple. The craftsmanship is staggering. Every inch of the pool's basin is lined with polished obsidian, its glassy surface catching torchlight and twisting it into strange, fluid shapes. This wasn't just a basin for water. It was a portal, a window painstakingly crafted to peer beyond the veil of the ordinary. Diving into the history of scrying, the practice takes on new dimensions here. Most cultures used simple bowls or crystals for divination, but the veiled ones engineered something far more potent. The pool's depth is precisely calibrated, shallow enough to avoid distortion, yet deep enough to swallow light. Its edges slope gently, designed to guide the viewer's gaze downward without distraction. Even the water itself was likely special. Sediment analysis reveals traces of minerals known to alter surface tension, creating a mirror-like sheen without the need for perfect stillness. This wasn't guesswork, it was physics wielded as sacred art. But what did they see in those dark waters? Nearby artifacts offer haunting clues. A bronze stand, its base weighted for stability, bears grooves where a bowl of incense might have rested, suggesting rituals to clear the sight before gazing. Fragments of thin metal discs etched with phases of the moon were found stacked at the pool's rim, possibly used to time sessions with celestial cycles. Then there are the tablets, dozens of them, each recording visions in frantic, fragmented script. The crowned shadow rises, one reads, 7 lights drown in the west, warns another. These weren't prophecies, they were reports, as if the pool didn't show the future but somewhere else entirely. The most unsettling discovery lies beneath the water. When archaeologists drained the pool, a decision some team members reportedly resisted, they found the obsidian floor wasn't smooth. Tiny, nearly imperceptible grooves radiated from the center in spirals, converging on a single, shallow depression, a place where something heavy had rested over and over. The wear pattern matches no known artifact from the site, but perhaps the answer floats just beyond reach in the pool's most cryptic feature. Its reflections don't behave as they should. Modern attempts to replicate its properties revealed something inexplicable. Under certain light angles, the water doesn't mirror the room above. It shows the ceiling's architecture altered, its arches twisted into unfamiliar shapes, as if the pool doesn't reflect the chamber, but some other version of it. Legends from the region whisper of the black water that remembers, a liquid mirror said to hold echoes of every face that ever peered into it. Standing at the pool's edge today, it's hard to shake the feeling that the glassy surface isn't empty. That if you stare too long, something might stare back, not your own reflection, but the imprint of all those who came before, their visions still swirling in the dark like ink dropped into water. The veiled ones didn't just seek answers here. They fed the pool their questions, their fears, their deepest longings, and the water, patient and eternal, swallowed everyone. The walls of the chamber hold secrets that only light can unlock, patterns so carefully concealed. They remain invisible until torchlight strikes them at the precise angle, revealing a labyrinth of geometric precision carved with near impossible delicacy. These aren't random decorations. The symbols form interlocking grids, their lines so fine they seem to hover just above the stone, appearing and vanishing like whispers in the dark. To the untrained eye, the walls look blank, but for those who knew where to stand, when to look, the chamber transforms into a living manuscript, its pages written in light and shadow. The complexity of these hidden designs defies simple explanation. Some resemble celestial maps, constellations plotted with uncanny accuracy, their star points connected by lines that mirror sacred geometries found in temples halfway across the world. Others spiral into mandala-like formations, their concentric circles radiating outward like ripples in a pond, each ring marked with symbols that shift meaning depending on where the light falls. The most striking pattern emerges only during the equinox, when sunlight pierces a narrow shaft and illuminates a sequence of triangles that cascade down the wall like steps into the underworld. This wasn't artistry, it was engineering, a feat of mathematics and astronomy fused into stone. But why go to such lengths to hide what sunlight could reveal? The answer may lie in the symbol's exclusivity. Unlike the murals or inscriptions meant for communal viewing, these designs were visible only to those who knew the chamber's secrets, initiates who understood the precise timing, the exact placement of light sources. The knowledge encoded here wasn't for the masses. It was for the chosen few, the keepers of rituals too potent, too perilous to be shared openly. The symbol's fleeting nature, appearing only under specific conditions, mirrors the transient state of enlightenment itself, glimpsed then gone, leaving only the memory of its truth. The symbol's content deepens the mystery. One recurring motif shows a series of intersecting lines forming what modern researchers recognize as the flower of life, a sacred geometric pattern found in ancient traditions from Egypt to China. Another depicts a ladder with 7 rungs, each marked by a different planetary symbol, suggesting an ascent through celestial spheres. These aren't just diagrams. They're blueprints, instructions for navigating realms beyond the physical. The most haunting design, a perfect circle divided into 8 segments, its arcs etched with tiny, repetitive marks resembling counting tallies. During the summer solstice, sunlight aligns with these marks, illuminating them one by one like a celestial clock counting down to something unseen. The technique used to create these hidden marvels is equally astonishing. Microscopic analysis reveals the carvings were made with tools no thicker than a needle, their strokes so shallow that even a fingertip brushed across the surface wouldn't detect them. The artists worked by feel as much as sight, guided by some unfathomable precision. Some symbols were even carved backward, their meaning only legible when projected as shadows onto opposite walls, a deliberate layer of encryption ensuring that even if someone stumbled upon the technique, the knowledge remained fragmented, just out of reach. Perhaps the most compelling clue lies in what the symbols omit. There are no gods depicted here, no pleas for mercy or prosperity. The language is pure geometry, a mathematics of the sacred that transcends culture and dogma. This wasn't a cry into the void, it was a conversation, a dialogue with forces understood not as deities but as constants, the turn of the stars, the dance of light and dark, the immutable laws that govern the seen and unseen world. Now, as we shine our modern lights across these ancient walls, the symbols shimmer back to life, their silent language waiting to be deciphered. But the true challenge isn't just reading them, it's understanding why they were hidden in the first place. Were they protecting knowledge too dangerous for the uninitiated? Or were they preserving a truth so fragile it could only survive in the spaces between light and shadow? The walls won't say, but their secrets linger, etched not just in stone, but in the very way the air moves when the light is just right, and the past flickers for a moment back into view. The air in the chamber holds more than just silence, it carries voices, not the imagined kind, but faint, unmistakable whispers that rise from the stones when you stand in just the right spot. Visitors describe them as fragments of speech, half-formed words that hover at the edge of hearing, like a conversation drifting through a closed door. The effect is so consistent that researchers have mapped the exact locations where these echoes emerge, never random, always aligned with the chamber's hidden geometry. Acoustics offer one explanation. The precision of the architecture creates pockets where sound lingers, bending and folding back on itself in ways that defy normal physics. A whisper near the altar might resurface seconds later near the pool, stretched thin as if traveling a great distance. Scientists have recreated the phenomenon with modern equipment, proving that the chamber's design can trap and recycle sound waves like a cosmic echo chamber. But here's the unsettling part: the voices don't match the test tones. They're lower, layered, as if multiple speakers are murmuring just out of sync. Then there are the words themselves. While most remain indistinct, a few visitors swear they've caught clear phrases, repeated syllables that match no known language from the era. One linguist, after months of analysis, identified a possible root in a dialect so ancient it predates written history. Another pattern emerges in the timing. The whispers grow more distinct during celestial events, particularly lunar eclipses, as if the chamber itself becomes more receptive when the sky shifts. Local legends add another layer. Oral traditions speak of the stone singers, spirits bound to the site by unfinished rites. Some accounts claim the voices are warnings, others insist they're invitations, guiding the worthy toward hidden knowledge. A 17th century traveler's journal recounts a chilling encounter, a night spent in the ruins where the whispers formed a melody, a hymn so beautiful it drew him toward the sealed door before he woke to himself at dawn, his fingers raw from scraping at the bronze seal. The most compelling evidence lies in the chamber's own design. The resonance stones, the blood channel, the mirror pool, they're not just tools for rituals. They're components of a larger system, a machine built not for physical labor but for metaphysical transmission. If sound can be trapped, could intention? Could emotion? The whispers don't fade like ordinary echoes. They cycle, returning hours or even days later, unchanged. It's as if the chamber doesn't just replay sound, it remembers it. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between science and the supernatural. Sound is energy, and energy never truly disappears. It transforms. Those whispers might be the remnants of long-uttered prayers, the vibrations of chants pressed into the stones like fingerprints in clay. Or perhaps there's something else entirely, a message not from the past but through it, sent across time by architects who understood that some voices aren't meant to fall silent. Standing in the chamber today, you don't just hear the whispers, you feel them, a prickle at the base of your skull, a pressure in your chest, as if the air itself is thick with unspoken words. The real mystery isn't whether the voices are real, it's whether they were ever meant to stop. Even in archaeology, where mysteries are expected, few things unsettle researchers more than artifacts that refuse to stay found. Take the case of the amphitheater's vanished relics, objects meticulously documented in early excavation journals, photographed, even sketched by hand, only to slip from the record like shadows at dawn. The first disappearance seemed innocuous enough, a bronze pendant shaped like a spiraling serpent, catalogued as item 107, noted for its unusual warmth to the touch even after centuries underground. By the time a curator reached for it 6 months later, its storage drawer held only a fine black dust resembling volcanic ash. Then came the clay tablets, 12 of them, inscribed with that unreadable script last seen being packed into a wooden crate for transport to a university lab. The crate arrived sealed but empty, its interior walls streaked with what one conservator described as fingerprints burned backward into the grain. Theories swirl like mist around these gaps in the collection. Some point to simple human error, mislabeling, misfiling, the chaos of underfunded archives. But the details defy easy explanations. One field notebook from 1942 describes a stone figurine, its surface carved with the same spiral cross symbol found throughout the site. The entry notes its weight as disproportionate to size, its texture neither stone nor metal but something between. 3 pages later, the description ends mid-sentence. The rest of the page is water-stained beyond readability, except for 2 words scribbled in the margin: "Gone, watch." Then there's the supernatural angle, less favored by academics but persistent in local lore. Villagers whisper of a curse protecting the site's most sacred objects, ensuring they return to the earth if removed. There's eerie precedent. In 1989, a team using ground-penetrating radar reported phantom readings, shapes flitting across their screens that matched the dimensions of missing artifacts, hovering 30 feet below the surface where no chambers were known to exist. When they returned with excavation tools, the signals had vanished. Perhaps most intriguing are the institutional silences. Requests for original excavation photos sometimes yield copies with crucial areas mysteriously blurred or cropped. A conservator's report referencing unexpected material degradation in certain objects was retracted without explanation. Even digital records aren't immune. One database entry for a missing obsidian blade flickers between "in storage" and "access restricted" at random. The pattern suggests more than negligence. Of the 23 documented vanishings, all share one trait. Each artifact was linked to the site's most enigmatic rituals. A mask with no eye holes, a whistle that produces no audible sound, a jar labeled "Breath of the Veiled Ones," found empty despite its wax seal being intact. It's as if the artifacts themselves resist scrutiny, retreating when examined too closely. What survives are the descriptions, tantalizing in their incompleteness. A researcher's offhand note about a mirror that reflects only in moonlight. A sketch of a dagger whose blade appears translucent in one drawing, solid in another. These fragments form a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing, each gap a question without an answer. Were these objects too dangerous to preserve? Or does their disappearance hint at something far stranger, that some relics aren't meant to be collected, only encountered? One thing is certain: every vanished artifact leaves behind not just a void, but a ripple. Conservation labs now keep backup cameras running round the clock. Storage rooms undergo daily inventories, and those who have witnessed the disappearances first and develop a habit, unconscious but universal, of glancing over their shoulders when handling artifacts from the amphitheater, as if expecting something to be watching from the shadows. Maybe it is, after all, in a place where walls whisper and shadows walk. Why shouldn't objects have wills of their own? The shadows in these chambers don't just linger, they stir. Explorers who have ventured deep into the site's passages report the same uncanny phenomenon: shapes shifting where no light falls, movements flickering at the edges of vision only to vanish when confronted. These aren't the predictable dances of torchlight on stone. There's something else entirely: figures that seem to step out of the walls themselves, pacing the alcoves or clustering near the altar before dissolving like smoke. One researcher's journal entry captures the dread perfectly. It's not that you see them, it's that you feel them watching back. What makes these accounts so unsettling is their consistency. Skeptics dismiss them as fatigue-induced hallucinations or the brain's tendency to impose patterns in darkness. But too many witnesses, seasoned archaeologists, no-nonsense surveyors describe identical details: shadows that move against airflow, that hold their shape a second too long, that leave no trace when chased. Thermal imaging reveals no temperature shifts, motion sensors detect nothing. Yet the stories persist, whispered over campfires and scribbled in margins of field notes like guilty secrets. The site's own murals offer a chilling parallel. Those faded paintings of robed figures with detached silhouettes, they're not just artistic whimsy, they're instructions or warnings. One fragmentary text recovered near the mirror pool speaks of the breath that walks, a phrase initially translated as metaphor until researchers noticed the accompanying diagram: a human form with its shadow drawn slightly out of sync, as if lagging behind its owner. Another tablet, cracked but legible, warns initiates to never turn when the shade calls your name. Then there's the acoustics. Visitors who experience the living shadows often report an accompanying sound, not a whisper or footstep, but a pressure, a sub-audible hum that vibrates in the teeth more than the ears. It's the same frequency the resonant stones produce when struck in sequence, suggesting the chamber's very architecture might be sustaining something beyond sight. Modern experiments with infrasound frequencies too low for human hearing show it can induce feelings of dread, even phantom visions, but the shadows predate these tests by millennia. Did the builders know? Did they engineer this effect deliberately, or were they documenting something they couldn't control? Perhaps the most haunting possibility isn't paranormal, but psychological. Ritual spaces worldwide exploit sensory deprivation and overload to induce transcendent states. The chamber's flickering torchlight, its echoing whispers, the claustrophobic press of stone, it's a recipe for altered perception. But this theory stumbles on one detail: the shadows don't appear randomly. They cluster near specific points: the blood channel's terminus, the sealed door, the spot where solstice light strikes the altar. Coincidence doesn't account for that kind of precision. The truth might lie in the artifacts themselves. Among the missing relics was a set of obsidian discs, their surfaces polished to eerie perfection. Early sketches show them etched with spirals that, when spun, create the illusion of movement, a primitive zoetrope. Were these tools meant to conjure shadows as part of rites? Or were they safeguards, devices to control something already present? The disc's last known location was a niche beside the mirror pool, where the water's reflections could have multiplied their effects exponentially. Now, standing in the chamber's silence, you don't just wonder about the shadows, you wonder what they want. Are they echoes, imprints of rituals so potent they scarred the air itself? Or are they something older, something the veiled ones didn't create but discovered and tried desperately to appease? The walls won't say, but sometimes in the corner of your eye, you catch the faintest suggestion of a shape and the terrible sense that it's been waiting for you to notice. Among the scattered fragments of the amphitheater's legacy, nothing sparks intrigue quite like the forbidden texts, those scrolls and tablets deemed too volatile for museums, too unsettling for textbooks, locked away in vaults where only a handful of scholars dare to tread. These aren't merely damaged artifacts or incomplete records. They're words deliberately sealed, knowledge judged too dangerous to see the light of day. The few who have glimpsed their contents describe symbols that seem to shift under the gaze, instructions for rites with no clear purpose, and warnings etched so deep into the clay they appear to bleed shadow when exposed to light. The censorship itself tells a story. Unlike other restricted archaeological finds, say, royal correspondence or military secrets, these texts weren't hidden by ancient hands. Modern institutions made the call, a rare consensus among historians, theologians, and even psychologists that some lines of inquiry shouldn't be crossed. One declassified memo from a 1960s excavation team references a tablet that induced uncontrollable aversion reactions in anyone who handled it for more than 10 minutes, despite no visible residue or scent. Another describes a scroll whose ink fluoresced under ultraviolet light, forming patterns that matched brainwave scans of deep terror. These weren't just ancient documents. They were triggers designed to provoke something primal in the reader, yet the most compelling clues come from what leaked before the lockdown. A fragmentary translation, circulated among academics before being suppressed, mentions the chanting of the 7 silences, a ritual requiring participants to recite phrases backward while holding their breath. Another, recovered from a private collector's notes, depicts a diagram of the amphitheater's underground chambers overlaid with celestial markers, suggesting the entire complex was built to harness specific cosmic alignments, not for worship, but for the thinning. The word recurs in multiple sealed texts, always capitalized, never explained. Who decides what stays buried? The answer lies in a quiet room halfway across the world, where a committee of 12 historians, physicists, even a neuroscientist meets annually to review the artifact status. Their debates are legendary in academic circles. Some argue the texts are cultural patrimony, humanity's right to know its own past, no matter how unsettling. Others counter that the veiled ones hid this knowledge for a reason, that their warnings about doors that must not be opened weren't metaphorical. The committee's voting records remain sealed, but whispers persist of a split decision in 1987, when a majority reportedly voted to destroy a particular text, only to discover it had vanished overnight from its climate-controlled case. The forbidden texts raise a question far older than the amphitheater itself. When does curiosity become recklessness? Other archaeological finds have faced restrictions. The Dead Sea Scrolls' sensitive passages, the Vatican's secret archives, but never for reasons so visceral. Perhaps the truth isn't in the words themselves, but in their effect. Like the resonant stones or the shadowed alcoves, these artifacts might be more than records. They could be mechanisms, devices meant to act on whoever interacts with them, carrying out their creators' intentions across millennia. One thing is certain: the few lines that have slipped through censorship paint a portrait of a people obsessed with boundaries between worlds, between states of being, between what should be known and what must remain hidden. And now, as we debate whether to unseal the rest, we're forced to confront an uncomfortable possibility. the Veiled Ones didn't just leave us warnings. They left us a test. 24th clue. The modern ritual's strange things still happen under the cover of moonlit nights near the ruins. Locals speak in hushed tones about figures in dark robes moving through the amphitheater's broken arches, their chants muffled by the wind. These aren't just ghost stories or idle rumors. Footprints are found in the morning dew, strange symbols chalked onto stones, remnants of wax from black candles pooled in the altar's grooves. The question isn't just who performs these rituals, but why. Are they historians attempting to reconstruct forgotten rites, or do they believe something older still lingers here, waiting to be awakened? The few who have stumbled upon these gatherings describe an eerie precision to their movements. Unlike historical reenactors who prioritize pageantry, these modern practitioners seem to follow an unseen script. Witnesses report seeing participants arrange themselves in geometric formations that mirror the chamber's hidden designs, their voices rising in unison at specific intervals, like they're answering something the rest of us can't hear. One farmer who claimed to have watched from a distance swore the shadows near the altar that night didn't behave like shadows at all. They pulsed, he said, as if keeping time with the chanting. Then there's the matter of continuity. Some of the symbols used in these modern rituals don't appear in any academic texts about the site. They do, however, match markings found in the chamber's deepest recesses, symbols never photographed or published, known only to archaeologists who have worked there. How could outsiders know details that were deliberately kept secret, unless, of course, they aren't outsiders at all? Whispers persist of a hidden lineage, a scattered group claiming descent from the Veiled Ones themselves, passing down fragments of rituals through generations under layers of disguise. But perhaps the most unsettling detail lies in the timing. These gatherings don't happen randomly. They coincide with celestial events, lunar eclipses, solstices, the rare alignment of planets that the amphitheater's architects once tracked with such precision. It's as if the rituals are less about reverence for the past and more about timing, as if the participants are trying to tap into some dormant mechanism buried in the stones. The authorities dismiss it as harmless eccentricity, the kind of thing that inevitably clings to ancient sites. Yet every few years another rumor surfaces, of missing persons last seen near the ruins, of livestock found drained of blood, of a low, throbbing hum emanating from the sealed door on certain nights. Rational explanations exist for each, of course, but rationality feels flimsy when standing in that chamber, where the air itself seems to remember what happened here. The line between past and present isn't just blurred, it's porous, and whatever walks that boundary doesn't seem to care which side it's on. History isn't a puzzle with neat edges, it's a labyrinth, and the deeper we venture into this site, the more the walls seem to shift. Decades of excavation, carbon dating, and spectral analysis have peeled back layers of time, yet the core questions remain stubbornly unanswered. Who were the architects of this hidden world? The amphitheater above bears the stamp of imperial engineers, but the chambers below whisper of a different hand at work. Older, subtler, fluent in languages we're only beginning to decipher. The construction techniques defy categorization, blending methods from cultures that supposedly never met. The stones themselves seem to mock our timelines, their mortar mixed with organic compounds that resist dating, as if the builders deliberately blurred their origins. Then there's the abandonment. Most ancient sites show signs of collapse, war, natural disaster, the slow creep of decay, but this place was sealed with chilling precision. Doorways welded shut with molten bronze, passageways filled not with rubble but with carefully packed clay, the library's tablets stacked like soldiers guarding a tomb. It's as if the Veiled Ones didn't flee, they retreated, folding their knowledge into the earth like a secret too dangerous to carry into the light. Why? Plague, persecution, or something far stranger, a ritual threshold crossed, a door they dared not leave open. The rituals themselves are a hall of mirrors. Every artifact, every mural offers a clue, but the sum refuses to cohere. The blood channel suggests sacrifice, yet the bones show no signs of violence. The resonant stones imply sonic transcendence, but the warnings speak of consequences. Even the celestial alignments, so precise in their mathematics, feel like half of a conversation, their purpose hovering just beyond reach. Were they communing with ancestors, summoning forces, or performing some act so alien to modern thought that we lack the vocabulary to name it? And what of the practitioners? Their fate is the greatest gap of all. No mass graves, no evidence of conflict, just silence. Yet traces linger. A genetic analysis of sediment reveals a startling diversity. North African, Levantine, even Eurasian DNA in the same layers. This wasn't an isolated cult. It was a crossroads, a convergence of traditions from across the ancient world. Did they scatter, assimilate, or did they succeed in whatever they sought, vanishing not into death, but into something beyond our comprehension? The cruelest irony: the more technology reveals, the less we know. Ground-penetrating radar maps chambers we can't access. AI deciphers script fragments only to spit out syntax without meaning. Even the whispers in the walls recorded, analyzed, played backward, resolve into nothing but static. This site isn't just a relic, it's a provocation, a reminder that history isn't a book to be closed, but a mirror reflecting our own limitations back at us. Perhaps the unanswered questions are the point. They force us to sit with uncertainty, to acknowledge that some truths resist excavation. The veiled ones didn't build their labyrinth to be solved. They built it to endure, to tease, to test, to remind us that the past isn't a territory to be conquered, but a conversation without end. And somewhere in the dark, beneath layers of earth and assumption, that conversation still waits. What if the amphitheater's hidden chambers weren't an anomaly, but a single thread in a vast, tangled web stretching across continents? From the subterranean temples of Malta to the echoing caves of Tibet, similar sites whisper of rituals that defy time and geography, spaces carved with the same precise alignments, adorned with eerily matching symbols, and steeped in traditions that mirror this amphitheater's darkest mysteries. The similarities aren't just striking, they're deliberate. A hidden chamber beneath a Mayan pyramid mirrors the amphitheater's blood channel down to the angle of its slope. A Neolithic tomb in Ireland's Boyne Valley shares the exact celestial alignment as the solstice markers here. Coincidence doesn't stretch that far. This isn't just parallel development, it's evidence of something far more profound. A shared spiritual language, lost to history but frozen in stone. Consider the implications. These sites weren't built by a single empire or culture. They span millennia and continents, crafted by hands that should never have met. Yet their architects wielded identical knowledge of acoustics, astronomy, and sacred geometry, technologies too advanced for their eras, too specific to be accidental. The chamber's resonant stones find their twins in Siberian shamans' drums, tuned to the same frequencies. The amphitheater's shadow rituals echo in Japanese Ainu cave paintings, where figures kneel before their own detached silhouettes. Even the warnings match, from the Celtic doorways to the underworld, to the Zulu legends of speaking stones. Cultures worldwide preserve tales of thresholds that must not be crossed. The veiled ones weren't unique. They were part of a chorus one we're only now learning to hear. But how? Trade routes can't explain this. The timelines don't align neatly enough for direct contact between builders. Some scholars argue for a common ancestral tradition, a proto-religion carried out of Africa by early migrations, its fragments scattered like seeds. Others point to the possibility of independent discovery, that certain spiritual truths reveal themselves universally to those who seek deeply enough. The most tantalizing theory, these sites were nodes in a network, not of roads or ships but of knowledge. Perhaps initiates traveled not with maps but with stars, following celestial roads to share secrets too potent for parchment. Or perhaps the connection wasn't physical at all. If the chamber's resonant stones can trap sound, could other sites have harnessed similar forces to communicate across distances we can't yet fathom? The most haunting parallel lies in how these sites end. Like the amphitheater, many were sealed abruptly, deliberately not in ruin but in ritual. The Maltese hypogeum's innermost chambers were filled with crushed red ochre, staining the earth the color of dried blood. The Tibetan cave's entrances were collapsed with care, their walls scratched with symbols nearly identical to the amphitheater's curses. This wasn't abandonment. It was coordination, a global vanishing act, as if every keeper of these secrets received the same warning at the same moment. What terrified them enough to bury their greatest work? The answer might lie in what these sites share beyond architecture, a preoccupation with thresholds, not just physical doors but moments, eclipses, solstices, planetary alignments, when the veil between worlds grew thin. Maybe they weren't hiding knowledge from outsiders. Maybe they were hiding the world from what that knowledge could unleash. The amphitheater's library warned of doors that must not be opened. The Mayans spoke of the time when the sky would awake. The Irish myths tell of the sleeping ones beneath the hills, separate cultures, same dread. Now, as we piece together this fractured mosaic, the scale of our ignorance becomes thrilling. Every new discovery doesn't just add to the puzzle, it shatters the edges we thought were fixed. The amphitheater isn't a relic, it's a key, one that might unlock doors scattered across the globe, all whispering the same question in languages we've yet to fully understand. Who were we, back when the world was still singing in a voice we've forgotten how to hear? The ritual site beneath the amphitheater doesn't just belong to the past, it pulses with questions that still haunt the present. Every artifact, every whisper in the dark, every shadow that lingers a moment too long is a reminder that history isn't a static record. It's a living thing, breathing just beneath the surface of what we think we know. The veiled ones didn't build this place to be forgotten. They built it to echo, to send ripples across time until someone finally stopped to listen. What makes this discovery so extraordinary isn't just the precision of the alignments or the strangeness of the rituals. It's the realization that an entire worldview, a way of understanding the cosmos, the divine, even the nature of existence, flourished outside the narratives we've long accepted as truth. The amphitheater above was a stage for empire, for conquest, for the roar of crowds, but below was a sanctuary for the unseen, the unspoken, the truths too potent for daylight. And now, centuries later, we're the ones holding the torches, stepping into the dark they left behind. The search won't end here. New technologies, LiDAR scans, AI-driven translation, even quantum imaging, could crack open secrets the veiled ones never imagined would surface. But the real challenge isn't just uncovering more clues, it's learning to see differently, to recognize that history isn't a single story but a tapestry of voices, some so faint we've mistaken their silence for absence. The next breakthrough might come from a re-examined artifact, a reinterpreted symbol, or even a chance encounter with a local legend that holds a fragment of the truth. This is why archaeology matters. It's not about digging up the past like some buried trophy. It's about humility, about acknowledging that civilizations we've dismissed as primitive, possessed knowledge we're only beginning to grasp. That altars and resonant stones might hold insights as profound as any modern lab. The ritual site forces us to confront an uncomfortable possibility. What if we're not the pinnacle of human understanding, but just another link in a chain stretching back further than we dare imagine? So what's next? The chamber's sealed door still waits, the untranslated texts still whisper, the shadows still move when no one's looking. This isn't the end of the story, it's the threshold. And if there's one lesson the veiled ones left us, it's that thresholds are meant to be crossed carefully, respectfully, but crossed all the same. The earth keeps its secrets well, but not forever. And the next great discovery might be closer than we think, waiting beneath a farmer's field, a city square, or even your own backyard. After all, the past isn't done speaking. We just have to learn how to listen. What do you think lies behind the sealed door? Have you ever encountered a place that felt wrong in ways you couldn't explain? Drop your theories in the comments, and if you're hungry for more mysteries, hit subscribe. The past isn't going anywhere, but our understanding of it. That's changing